This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Chapter 23 of Fires of Heaven. The fifth I give you, and her symbol is the dragon. Raining mist around a grassy hilltop, Egwene watched the streams of Aiel coming down from the Jangai Pass. The saddle had pushed her skirts above her knees again, but she hardly noticed that now. She could not spend every minute fussing with them, and she had on stockings. It was not as though she were bare-legged. In trotting columns, the Aiel flowed by below her, arranged by clan and sept and society. Thousands upon thousands, with their pack-horses and mules, the Gaishane who would tend the camps while the rest fought, spreading a mile wide, and more still in the pass or already out of sight ahead. Even without families, it seemed a nation on the march. The silk path had been a road here, a full 50 paces wide and paved with broad white stones, slicing straight through the hills carved to make a level. Only occasionally was it visible through the mass of Aiel, although they seemed to prefer running on the grass. But many of the paving stones had lifted up at a corner or sunk down at one end. More than 20 years had gone by since this road had carried more than local farmers' carts and a handful of wagons. It was startling to see trees again, real trees, towering oaks and leatherleaf in actual thickets rather than an occasional wind-twisted, stunted shape, and tall grass waving in the breeze across the hills. There was real forest to the north, and clouds in the sky, thin and high, yet clouds. The air seemed blessedly cool after the waste, and moist, though brown leaves and large brown swaths through the grass told her that in reality it might be hotter and drier than usual for this time of year. Still, the countryside of Cairhien was a lush paradise compared to the other side of the Dragon Wall. A small stream meandered north, beneath a nearly flat bridge, bordered by the dried clay of a broader bed. The River Galen lay not too many miles away in that direction. She wondered what the Aiel would make of the river. She had seen Aiel near a river once before. The shrunken band of water marked a definite break in the steady flow of people, as men and maidens paused to stare in amazement before leaping across. And so this is one of the larger towns before we get to Cairhien.
Was.
It's got walls and, right, well, I mean, suppose you could say the town's still there, but there's nobody in it.
It lacks people.
We'll see in a moment as Rand is looking around, or perhaps this is from Egwene's perspective, but as folks are looking around that they haven't left, I think the line is something like, not a chicken or a cow anywhere. Everything is dead. What they didn't haul away as slaves or eat, they killed.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. And he says here, they didn't even like me that much. Like, they probably would have been willing to ally with him against the Dragon Reborn, because they're, like, on the edge of his control and not really an ally. It's like, if Couladin had given them a chance, they probably would have been like, yeah, sure, we're with you.
Yeah.
But nope, he just slaughtered them.
Moraine had speculated that the Cairhienans are so angry with him for various reasons, but sending a Terran army to assist them into their territory, that this town may have just let the Shaido through if Couladin had given him a chance. But obviously he did not.
That is definitely an Aiel attitude towards the tree killers. Like, even the quote-unquote good Aiel are kind of like, well, you know, it was just tree killers, right? Like, it's not that bad. It's maybe a little excessive. You know, it's like they really don't like the Cairhien.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember that old phrase, and it essentially translates from Latin to war as the Romans do it, and it just means, like, total war.
Mm-hmm.
You can surrender, or they will, like, literally kill every man, woman, and child, burn everything down to the ground, deconstruct the stone buildings, and then, like, sow salt into the earth so that you can't even build it again for 50 years or something. You do crazy stuff to drive fear into their future enemies.
Yeah, this feels a little more like Sherman's March to the Ocean, where it's just like, hey, we're advancing in this direction, and anyone in our way is getting burned and wiped out and slaughtered. And because we don't care who you are, we think you're just terrible, awful people, and we're murderous bastards.
Right after the read-in, I see, this is what I was talking about, where RJ is really pounding it in. Like, from Egwene's perspective, she looks at Kadir's wagons. Moraine and Lan rode with the wagons, like, not ahead of them or behind them, but, like, with that particular wagon. And it comes up a bunch more times, but we also see, from Egwene's perspective, that she had tried to ask Moraine, and Moraine became a bit bristly.
And that one particular wagon is often identified by being the one with the twisted doorframe ter'angreal on it.
Right.
There's a couple other interesting things on there. A red crystal chair, which honestly could be a contender for the domination chair. We've talked about that a few times as possibly being, I thought the crystal throne might be that, but here's another contender.
Yep. Well, there could be more than one. There doesn't have to just be one of these things.
Absolutely. And yeah, the crystal throne, well, what if it's a red crystal throne? And this is a red crystal chair?
Nobody ever says what the color is.
Not that I know of. 2 child-sized statues of a nude man and woman. Honestly, not sure what those are. I want to say Angreal, but you'd think they would have figured that one out. So I want to say they're Ter'angreal of some kind.
I assume they all are.
Rods of bone and ivory, and strange black materials in varying length and thicknesses. So pretty vague stuff there in terms of just like funky, crystalline Ter'angreal that may or may not do something.
Yeah, I have no clues on what the actual Ter'angreal are.
Don't they all pretty much get destroyed when the doorframe burns down? I think the entire wagon just goes up in flames.
We've talked about this in the past, and we came to the conclusion that basically nobody really knows what happens to all these Ter'angreal after Cairhien.
Yeah, well, we don't hear about them again. I think my assumption is that they end up staying in Cairhien, but...
Yeah, they're staying there, or...
We never hear, in the books at least, where they end up.
Painted Dead's telling us that someone asked RJ about this question that we're asking, all the Ter'angreal that seem to be left behind, and that RJ responded that they're being just stored in a tower somewhere. They're just sitting around.
I would assume one of the topless towers in Cairhien is what you're referring to when you say one of the towers?
I figure, yeah.
The next thing I have is we get sort of her checking out all the maidens, and we see Ascendra being a Dako Vale. We see the maidens who ran away with their dolls for being punished for acting like children, and he puzzles over that for a long time, or she puzzles over that for a long time. Which is interesting because she was required to basically wear that same outfit when she was acting childish, so I thought she would have been able to put that together.
Oh, perhaps she... Yeah, I don't think that she would see it as... not be able to see it as a punishment, but probably why.
We run across Couladin's gruesome message of more bodies just left impaled.
Yeah, and like a wall across the pass that Couladin left for them so that they would have to knock them down in order to walk through. A bunch of whole bodies impaled on stakes. Couladin had left another message. Men and women impaled across their paths, standing there 7 days dead. So Couladin is at least a week ahead of them.
Yeah, he took off pretty fast. They had to wait to gather their clans, whereas he moved in the middle of the night. And I would have thought he would have been able to catch up a little faster, though. I guess maybe just because there's way more people in Rand's group that he's not able to catch up. But obviously Couladin's clan and the wagons, right. I can say Couladin's clan must have had to stop to kill all these people. That must have slowed them down, and to take prisoners and stuff like that.
I feel like there's a line in here somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it is, but where wagons are brought up as the reason that they're so much slower than Couladin's party, who's much smaller.
I believe that. I'm not sure where that line is, but...
And I just have maybe a paragraph worth that I thought was worth reading. As Egwene is slowly moving along, she gets sort of close to Rand and she can overhear some of his conversation. And it's basically Rand telling a group of the assembled clan chiefs, and I'll take this moment to remind listeners that I can't remember exactly how many clans are here with Rand now. There's a handful, 3, 4, maybe 5. And there are other clans that are still trying to catch the main party. So we see Rand say here, and whoever comes through after Timolen, Rand was saying in a firm voice, has to be told the same thing. Stone Dogs left to watch at Tain had returned to report that the Miagoma were entering the pass a day behind them. But remember that there were clans that were like on the opposite far side and to the south of the waste. So they basically have to run the longest possible distance across the waste to catch Rand. So they're way behind some of these clans.
Yeah, they are. They're strung out pretty far.
Rand took what he had and started moving because he knew what Couladin was probably going to do.
And it took him, 4 days to get through the Changai Pass? That must be quite a long pass through the mountains.
Yeah, it can be, and we don't see a terrible lot of description about it, but it can also be a pass through the mountains is often hard climbing. I've definitely gone over some passes myself that you could never get a wagon over. There's no way. You gotta climb it. You know what I mean? Like, it may be the lowest point in the mountains, like the easiest way to get through, but the easiest way is not necessarily easy.
Well, and they do say in the beginning of this chapter that they were like on this wide stone road that had been... So at some point in the past, it seems like this pass was better maintained. You know, it was the Silk Road. Basically, before the Aiel War, 20 years ago, the Cairhien were rich off of the goods that came through this road from the Aiel Waste. And from Shara, yeah, but it's not maintained because...
It's no longer maintained. Maybe overgrown, and just herding thousands and thousands of people is a lot harder than... You know what I mean? You gotta wonder how long it takes... If you have tens of thousands of people, if the first line stands up and walks, even if it's 100 feet across or 200 feet across, stands up and walks, how long until the back of the line stands up and walks? You know what I mean? Could be like all day.
I have a hard time really with understanding like how you move those kind of masses of people on foot. It seems like without modern technology, I don't even know how armies... Well, I guess a lot of them didn't. You know, people died just moving around, right? That was the whole problem with armies before modern technology is like sickness and cold and disease would kill more people than war.
More people are going to die of drinking bad water than they are of actually getting stabbed.
Right.
Anyway, I'll read this little part because it's a bit powerful. Rand says, I've come to stop Couladin despoiling this land, not to loot it. A hard message, Bale said. For us as well, if you mean we cannot take the fifth. Han and the rest, even Ruark nodded. The fifth, I give you. Rand did not raise his voice, yet suddenly his words were driven nails. But no part of that is to be food. We will live on what can be found wild or hunted or bought, if there is anyone with food to sell, until I can have the Terrans increase what they're bringing up from Tyr. If any man takes a penny more than the fifth, or a loaf of bread without payment, if he burns so much as a hut because it belongs to a tree killer, or kills a man who is not trying to kill him, that man I will hang, whoever he is. Dark to tell this to the clans, Derek said, almost as stony. I came to follow he who comes with the dawn, not to coddle oath-breakers.
And that does lead to one of the most, for me, a very painful scene when, I can't remember the Aiel's name, when he comes up to Rand, he's like, I killed a man for having, essentially, the dragon tattoos. I guess that means I have to die now, right? And Rand's like, yeah. Magnan, that's right, Magnan, who was second just to Bale.
Good job, Ladone.
So I remember that just being super powerful, and that's basically the fulfillment of this law, which is to say, you know, you killed a man who was totally innocent. All he had was tattoos on his arms. Like, you get hung for that, and that is justice.
Rand's basically trying to implement more modern, or modern as we would understand them, rules of war. Like, you don't just run in and murder people, even if they're not following your rules. Like, they get to live, you know, whatever regular farmers get to live however they normally do. You can only kill people if they're trying to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, you can only take the fifth, no more than the fifth. And I feel like what's really important is Rand says, and none of that fifth can be food.
Because that's the truly valuable stuff here. You know, that's what people need to survive. Goods and gold and, you know, those can be replaced. But food means life.
He knows that the people of Cairhien are already starving and can't afford to lose anything as far as food goes. But Rand's like, go ahead and take a fifth out of all the palaces. That's fine.
Tax the wealthy.
Says the Dragon Reborn.
Absolutely.
We see a bit between Egwene and Aviendha here, partly talking about what Rand said, but also talking about Aviendha's relationship with Rand.
I think one of the relevant points is Egwene's being like, is watching Rand and saying he was changing faster than she could keep up with now.
Mm-hmm.
And for now, she's telling herself that's a good thing, but this is where he changes and he's starting to get harder. We're in those first stages of Rand becoming Gwendyar and just becoming brittle. And he needs to change, but he needs to change in the right ways.
Yeah, he is getting hard, as we see him get bad later. Darth Rand.
We get a little bit here. We were speculating about who made the hilt and the scabbard in a previous episode, and here it's a man from... what is that word?
Yeah, I had guessed.
Tane? On the journey.
I think I was saying Tane, but yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
On the journey through the past, so... I don't even know where that is. Let me Google where Tane is.
It was the first city or first town that they get to, where there's a few refugees, and there's the people hanging from the walls of the town. And Rand's talking to a guy, and one of those guys is a leather worker.
That's right.
One of the refugees. And
he's not going to get a farmer to make it, or an Aiel to make it, because no Aiel would touch the blade to make it a hilt.
They wouldn't be allowed to. And just as an intro... Oh gosh, my read for Soralea is long, but my read out is short.
Okay.
But just as an intro to what's happening, we're just talking about how Egwene is realizing, wow, he's really much more like a king now. And at some point she says, he truly is in command, Egwene says. And Aviendha responds, I do not know him. I cannot know him. Look at that thing he carries. Referring to the sword. And Egwene's like, you did give it to him, Aviendha. Her friend scowls. She's just in her emotions and wants to get away from him, and she's trying to find reasons to hate him, is what's happening here.
Yeah, I'm totally agreeing with that.
But Egwene doesn't understand what's happening, and she's like, listen, you're still upset about him getting upset with you last night. I get it, but if you tell him how upset you are, I'm sure he'll apologize.
And she's like, that is not at all what I'm upset about. You are totally misreading that situation.
Aviendha says, I do not want his apologies, Aviendha muttered. I can bear this no more. I cannot sleep in his tent any longer.
'Cause I've fallen in love.
Suddenly, she took Egwene's arm, and if Egwene had not known better, she would have thought her friend on the brink of tears. You must speak to them for me, to Amis and Bear and Melaine. They will listen to you. You are Aes Sedai. They must let me return to their tents. They must. Who must do what? Soralea said, dropping back from the others to walk along beside them. The wise one, of Shendhold, had thin white hair and a face like leather drawn tight over her skull, and clear green eyes that could knock a horse down at 10 paces. That was the way she normally looked at anyone. When Soralea was angry, otherwise ones sat quietly, and clan chiefs made excuses to leave. Melaine and another wise one, a graying Blackwater Nakai, started to join them too, until Soralea turned those eyes on them. If you were not so busy thinking of that new husband, Melaine, you would know Amis wants to talk with you. You also, Aeron. Melaine flushed bright red and scurried back to the others, but the older woman got there first. Soralea watched them go, then put her full attention on Aviendha. Now we can have a quiet talk. So, you do not want to do something you were told to do, of course, and you think this child Aes Sedai can get you out of doing it? Soralea, Aviendha got no further. In my day, girls jumped when a wise one said jump, and continued jumping until they were told to stop. As I am still alive, it is still my day. Need I make myself clearer? Aviendha took a deep breath. No, Soralea, she said meekly. The old woman's eyes came to rest on Egwene. And you? Do you think you are going to beg her off? No, Soralea. Egwene felt as though she should curtsy. Good, Soralea said, not sounding satisfied, just as if it was what she had expected. It almost certainly was. Now I can speak to you of what I really want to know. I hear the Karakarn has given you an interest gift like no other ever heard of. Rubies and moonstones. Aviendha jumped, as if a mouse had run up her leg. Well, she probably would not, but it was the way Egwene would have jumped in that circumstance. The Aiel explained about Laman's sword and the scabbard, so hastily that her words tripped over one another. Soralea shifted her shawl. muttering about girls touching swords, even wrapped in blankets, and about having a sharp word with young bear. So he has not captured your eye. A pity. It would bind him to us. He sees too many people as his now. For a moment, she eyed Avienda up and down. I will have Ferran look at you. His great-father is my sister's son. You have other duties to the people than learning to be a wise one. Those hips were made for babes. Avienda stumbled over an upraised paving stone, and just caught herself short of falling. I will think on him, when there is time, she said breathlessly. I have much to learn yet, of being a wise one, and Ferran is Sayadun, and the black guys have vowed not to sleep beneath a roof or tent until Couladin is dead. Couladin was Sayadun. The leathery-faced wise one nodded as though everything had been settled. You, young Aes Sedai, you know the Karakarn well, it is said. Will he do what he has threatened? Hang even a clan chief? I think maybe that he will. More quickly, Egwene added, but I am sure he can be brought to see reason. She was not sure of any such thing, or even that it was reason. What he had said sounded only just, but justice would do him no good if he found the others turning against him as well as the Shaido. Soralea glanced at her in surprise, then turned to gaze on the chiefs, around Rand's horse that should have knocked the lot of them flat. You mistake me. He must show that mangy pack of wolves that he is the chief wolf. A chief must be harder than the other men, young Aes Sedai, and the Karakarn harder than other chiefs. Every day a few more men, and even maidens, are taken by the bleakness, but they are the soft outer bark of the ironwood. What remains is the hard inner core, and he must be hard to lead them. Egwene noticed that she did not include herself or the other wise ones among those who would be led. Muttering to herself about mangy wolves, Soralea strode ahead, and soon had all the wise ones listening as they walked. Whatever she was saying, it did not carry.
As I am still alive, it is still my day. Need I make myself clearer?
One of the finest lines in the whole series.
Oh, Jesus, just Cerelia rocking that one out. It's her personality to a T.
Yeah, I love her, and I do have a couple of things that I feel are important to say here. At first, I interpreted what happens here when Soralea is interested in this strange interest gift that she heard Avienda got. But Avienda quickly says, no, it wasn't an interest gift. And Soralea seems to think that's a shame, and then quickly, like so quickly, is trying to marry her off to some distant relative. And I don't think that she's actually trying to marry her off. She's trying to put fear into Avienda.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. She's like, oh, well, you're not interested in Rand? How about this guy?
Not interested in him? Well, we've got a marriage already arranged for you. Here we go. Get ready. And Avienda's like, no. Actually, no. I think maybe this arrangement's just fine.
Yeah, I can sleep in his tent. That's fine. Well, and again and again, the reason she doesn't want to sleep in the tent is she is falling in love with him. That's the problem, right?
Right.
She loves Rand.
And the second part that I really liked, and the reason I made that read so long, is because at first it seems Soralea is upset, like the clan chiefs are, about hanging a clan chief for taking more than the fifth, or taking food, or whatever, and all of Rand's additions to what the normal laws would be. And Soralea... Well, Egwene quickly says, oh, well, I think he could be brought to reason. And Soralea basically says, I hope he's not brought to reason. I hope he does strictly enforce rules like this, because it's the only way you're going to lead all of the clans, or 12 of them. Is it 13 clans including the Gen?
Yeah.
Or is that the 14th?
No, it's 13 including the Gen.
Okay, so 11 clans across the Dragon Wall.
Yeah.
And keep them all in line and win the last battle and all these incredibly important things. He's going to have to be a really tough person. He's going to have to enforce laws like this.
Totally. But, we talk about how he gets a little too hard and he stops taking people into account. So there's a balance there.
Absolutely.
And he ends up falling too far on the other side.
I think you're right. He goes way overboard at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And Egwene says, wait, are you actually interested in marrying that guy? And Avienda's like, no, I just said I would consider it, because if I said no, then I would definitely have to.
Right. she'd find somebody for me. So I'm like, yeah, I'll play along for a little while just to get you off my back. But no, he laughs like a braying mule and picks at his ears.
Yeah, it was funny, a mental image. Oh, and the third thing that I wanted to point out that I thought was interesting about this is that, so this young man, Ferran, that Soralea offers to Avienda, essentially, is of Sayadun, the Black Eyes. That's his society. So, and that's the same society, apparently, that Couladin was in, although the Sayadun have apparently sworn they won't sleep under a roof or even under a tent until Couladin is dead. Because by doing what Couladin did, he dishonored his society to such a great degree that they're vowing to kill him themselves, to hunt him down.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a shame they need Matt to do it for him.
Well, he just happens to get there first.
All right. I don't have much for the rest of this chapter, really. There's
not too much left. Yeah, other than what I just talked about.
Yeah.
Avienda saying, oh no, I wasn't actually interested. I just knew I had to feign at least a little interest to get her to leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll read us out here. To change the subject, Egwene said, I will speak to Amis and the others for you. Not that she really thought it would do much good now. The right time had been before it began. At least Avienda saw the impropriety of the situation finally. Perhaps, if we go to them together, I'm sure they will listen. No, Egwene, I must obey the wise ones. Ch23 requires it. Just as if she had not been asking for intercession a moment earlier. Just as if she had not all but begged the wise ones not to make her sleep in Rand's tent. But why is my duty to the people never what I wish? Why must it be what I would rather die before doing? Avienda, no one's going to make you marry or have babies, not even Soralea. Egwene wished that she had sounded a bit less limp on that last. You do not understand, the other woman said softly, and I cannot explain it to you. She gathered her shawl around her and would not speak of it further. She was willing to discuss their lessons, or whether Couladin would turn and give battle, or how marriage had affected Melaine, who seemed to have to work at being prickly now, or anything at all, except what it was she could not, or would not, explain. I also thought that was cute. Melaine's, bad at being a taskmaster now, or recently, because she's,
distracted.
Honeymoon phase, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, Sakan, I was watching a bunch of those the other day, and I watched the one with Hillary Clinton on Between the Ferns. It was pretty hilarious.
He just hits the right amount of insulting.
And Hillary's just the right amount of coldly, you're an idiot.
Right.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?